recording this webinar, and we will go from there. All right, so today we're going to spend about 45 minutes or so talking about new requisition and workflow functionality in Dynamics GP. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Polino. I'm a senior consultant with Integrated Business Group and Microsoft MVP, and I do lots and lots and lots of GP stuff. So requisitions and workflow is actually a feature that I'm really enjoying as I work with it inside of GP. They got a lot of things right the first time through. And so I think it's going to be fun to take a look at it. All right, so requisitions are new in GP 2013 R2, and they're in GP 2015. They carried through. The requisition functionality is about the same. Work in GP 2015. Workflow got some improvements. We'll talk just briefly about that as we go on. But sticking with requisitions for a minute, one of the cool things I really like in GP is that when you do a requisition, you don't have to fill in everything that you need for a PO. So typically a requisition is, I want to buy something. Maybe I don't know who we buy it from, or possibly even what the price is supposed to be, or those kinds of things. I just know that for our department, we need to purchase something. And so what's cool is you can fill out what you know on a requisition, still pass it through the approval process, and then the person who does the PO still has the option to fill out the remaining pieces. So for example, if I know that I need a computer for my department, but I really don't know what vendor, I know we buy Dells or we buy HPs or something, but I don't know whether we go through a vendor like CDW or whether we buy direct, that kind of thing. I don't have to know that. I just have to know that I want to buy this particular thing. When you get to a requisition, the POs have an asterisk that indicate that, the requisitions have an asterisk that indicate this will be required for a PO, but it's not required right now. And then, of course, you can create POs from requisitions, and then we've got a whole approval workflow via GP Workflow 2.0. So let's just take a quick look at requisitions, and then we'll come back and we'll kind of work through some of the rest of the pieces. This happens to be GP 2015. It works exactly the same way in 2013 R2. So don't freak out thinking that you got to go all the way to 2015 yet. So here's purchase requisitions. And you'll see it looks a lot like a purchase order. So I can pull in, maybe I want to say, new computer. And I don't know what ship to address I want yet, because there's a couple of different places maybe I could ship it to. So I'm just going to leave that blank, and we'll come down here, and I'm going to say computer, and I want one of them. We are going to spend $2,000 on it. I'm not sure what site ID that we want this shipped to, because I don't know how our purchasing department works. I don't know the vendor ID, the shipping method, or anything. So I'm just going to save this briefly. Come back, make sure that it's there. All right, so all my stuff is there. So this is great. I've decided that I want to buy something. I've got the basics. You'll notice these are the asterisks, so I don't know what the site ID is or who the vendor ID is. When I get to actually create a PO, someone's going to need to know that, even if it's just the person who's creating the PO. We'll look at that as we kind of walk through this process. All right, so that's just kind of the basic requisition creation and what the pieces look like. So we can do data entry for requisitions just like we did via the desktop client. So that's exactly what we just did. We can also do it via the web client. So the kind of e-requisition functionality that was in the Business Portal has gone away, and really the web client is the web vehicle for creating a requisition. They are working on a Windows 8 application, so that's sort of that Metro look for Windows 8 and Windows 8 tablets, and I know that that is coming, and the team has told me that they plan an iOS and an Android app, but I haven't seen them yet, and I don't have any timing. But that is the plan as of now. So the cool thing about requisitions is we want to get this thing approved so that then once it gets to a PO, it can just head on through the process. We can do approval with requisitions via email, via navigation lists, or via the transaction window. And those are important because they do affect the licensing, which we'll get to in a minute here. And then there's a homepage widget to help you manage requisitions too. So let's kind of walk through what the approval looks like. All right, so I'm going to submit this thing for approval. I'm going to put in some notes. Something like that. And while that's taking a second, let me just, or not. There we go. Let me just slide over and double check, make sure. Oh, we've got a couple of questions, so let me look at those really fast. We'll talk about licensing in just a second. You don't need a full GP license to create a requisition. So we'll talk about kind of what the specifics are around that. I promise I'm getting there. All right, so that created an email, and let's back here. All right, so just for simplicity's sake, I should have an email in here. This is actually Apple's iCloud Mail. So I just want to show you that you don't have to have Microsoft Mail. You don't have to have Outlook. Almost all mail clients seem to work with this. So I did a couple of things. I asked it, I want to get a notification when I have a task assigned to me or an approval assigned to me. And then as the submitter, so as the person who requested, in this case, I happen to be both the approver and the submitter for our simplicity. Normally, you wouldn't let someone approve their own stuff, and we can control that. So in this case, I get an email as the submitter that says, hey, this document has been submitted. Okay, so at least I know it went through. And then as the approver, I get one that says, maybe. There we go. I get one that says that I have a task assigned to me. And so the cool thing about this is it actually tells me what it is. I can approve, reject, or delegate. We'll talk about delegation a little later, but I can do all of this from inside the email. It tells me my company for this PO, that I've got a purchase requisition and requisition number and the total amount. And then I've also got here, we've customized it, and this is really easy to do. What's cool is that these emails are very flexible. I'm actually showing the individual line items. So we're buying a computer, and apparently we had this in the system. It's a standard white computer, and it is going to be $2,000. And then here's my note to the approver. So if I want to approve this, all I need to do is click the button to hit approve. I'm already logged in. I've already logged in one time. If you're not logged in, you'll get a box to actually do the login and pass the credentials. So I can approve this. This works from an iPhone. It works from an Android device. It's really just a web-based approval that's going through web services and has the GP security around it. And so now when I come back into GP, if I go and look at I actually have an approval. So let's take a quick look back here. The other thing is when I go to manage this, kind of as we're walking through our process here, that approval could come days later, hours later, whatever. What's cool is we actually have a homepage widget here, which gives us information. So here I've got my job is to manage purchase requisitions and turn them into POs. I can see I've got saved requisitions. I have 18 items that are pending user action. They're pending approval or rejection. I've got 19 items that are ready for purchase, and I have none that have been rejected. And from this screen, I can actually enter a requisition. I can view them, find another one, and I actually get a list of outstanding requisitions as well. So all of these lead back into navigation lists and smart lists around controlling requisitions. So you saw I approved that via an email. I can also approve via a smart list. Via a navigation list. So if I come to purchase requisitions here, I could pick one of these items if I wanted to and approve it from there. Or if I go ahead and we'll just open up one of these items, if I actually pull it up, I can also come in here under, oops, where'd we go? Sorry, my mistake. Hit a wrong button there. And come up here to workflow and I can approve it. So I kind of want to work through what the process looks like, and then we'll tackle the workflow if that's okay with folks. So here's my requisition. This is our computer that we're going to buy, and I want to turn this into a purchase order. Well, I can come up here with actions, and I can simply say that I want to purchase this. I'm going to get this review window, which says, hey, you've got some problems. So X's are errors, and little signs are warnings, little exclamation point signs. I can fix my problems from here. So I have no vendor. So let me come here. I can come to my PO and I can add the vendor that I want to buy this from. I will buy it from Advanced Office Systems. So you see it clears that error for me. If I go to my item here, I don't have a vendor item for this. So let me go ahead and put that in really fast. Do that assignment. If you're using inventoried items, typically that's already assigned. And I also don't have a site ID here. So let me grab a site ID that we want this for. Now, in this case, my requisition was for $2,000, but actually the item is in the system at only $900. So right now the PO is going to default to what the price is in the system because that may be our contracted price with them. So that fixed computer. The next one really is our ship to. And I can't actually fix that from this screen, but I can fix it on the PO. Because this is a warning, I don't have to fix it. I can actually come here and say, I want this item and do generate. And it's going to create a PO for me. We'll skip the report there. And then I'm going to come and take a look at my POs. And let me grab my last PO here. So there's my PO. At the same time, I need a ship to address, it said. So I'm just going to grab this here and drop a ship to address in. There we go. I'm probably going to need a shipping method at some point, even though it might not be required. Save, and at that point, I've got a PO. and it can go through all the regular kind of process in there. All right, a couple of quick questions here. Can you turn off the email notifications? Yes, you've got complete control over the email notifications. When we kind of hit the workflow portion, we'll walk through those pieces. And you can enter as many items as you want on a requisition, and they're all going to show up. So it's just like a PO. If you need to requisition 100 items, you can do all of those in order to be able to, and then someone would just approve that whole thing. All right, let's kind of go back here. So that's kind of the walkthrough of what a requisition, the life cycle of what a requisition would look like. So let's talk about some specifics now. From a licensing standpoint, you do not need a GP user license at all to approve requisitions via email. So if the email where I showed and you check the box and clicked approve, no GP license is required at all. We're showing off requisitions, but you can also do email approvals of POs. If you want to skip the requisition process and start with a PO, I run into some folks who prefer to do that. That requires that everything be entered and has some other limitations, but approving POs via email also does not require a GP license. A GP limited user license is required to create a requisition via the desktop or the web client. So this is similar. Business Portal had its own kind of business portal licensing for creating requisitions via e-requisition. This sort of follows that model in that we're just using a limited license in order to create a requisition. They can still go into GP via the desktop, or they can use the web client to create a requisition that way. If they're set up as a limited user, they can also approve requisitions via a navigation list. I know that seems like an odd delineation, but that's where the team put the limitation. If you have a full GP user license, you can still create requisitions like everybody else, and you can also create purchase orders. You can approve via email, of course, or via navigation lists, or directly in the transaction window. And assuming that you have the proper permissions inside of GP, you can transfer requisitions to POs. So it does not require a full GP license to create a requisition. It is a limited user license. Ron or Jeff can help if you want more info. There is a transition to translate your business portal licenses into limited user licenses, and I don't recall what the specifics are, but they can help you kind of walk through that piece. Right. Can you attach a vendor quote or other documentation to the requisition? Right now, you cannot. That is a request that we have made, and the team has heard that, so it is coming. I would suspect we will see that as early as the first update to GP 2015, which I would expect in the May timeframe. The team has kind of heard that request, and it is coming, but today you can't. You could conceivably send that separately, but of course, if you're doing a large volume, I get that doesn't make sense. And then, as Ron mentioned, the licenses, the limited user licenses, are concurrent. So they're not named user licenses, so you don't have to buy, I think that's right, you don't have to buy one for absolutely everybody. You just can only have so many people doing requisitions at once. All right, so let's talk a little bit about workflow, because workflow really is an integral part of requisition. Really, the point of the requisition is it takes the purchase request out of the hands of, puts the purchase request closest to the person who needs the item, ideally. So that person can put in what they know, And then in a lot of cases, it may be a professional buyer or someone with additional information who's actually doing the buying to give the company the best deal and use preferred vendors and all those other kinds of things. So let's talk briefly about workflow. This is brand new in GP 2013 R2. If you've seen anything about the SharePoint workflow in previous versions, forget all of that. Just pretend it never existed. Workflow 2.0 does not use SharePoint. It is completely integrated into GP, and it uses primarily GP web services for workflow processing. So the cool thing is you get this, you can do an email like we saw with approvals, rejection. You can even do delegation. And so if, for example, I'm wanting to move into the next job up, I might choose to delegate certain approvals to the person below me to see how they handle that. Maybe forward it to them or delegate it to them with a little note and kind of see how that, give them some limited responsibility to be able to grow from. Or there's a separate delegation for things like vacations, which we'll look at, but this might also be, maybe the approval has come to me, but I don't feel like I'm the right person to approve this. Maybe it's a request from another department that really should have gone to someone else for approval. That would let you kind of push that out. Workflow will let you set a whole bunch of conditions. So if you want to say, if the amount is greater than 5,000, it goes to this person. If it's less than 5,000, it goes to that person. After the first person approves, we want this person to do the approval. Kind of all kinds of things. I did one recently with someone where basically they have dollar tiers. So if it's less than $5,000, it's person A. If it's between 5 and 10,000, it's person B. And if it's over 10,000, it's person C. And then in addition, it was departmental. So basically if the buyer, which represents departments for them, if the department is administrative, the person who approves are different. If the department is marketing, the approvers are different. So you can do an awful lot with the workflows. In addition, there's a history. So it maintains a history of who approved what, rejections, all of those kinds of things, the notes that were on there, that kind of piece. There are 2 delegation options. So we saw kind of I can delegate on the fly, or a GP user can assign a delegate to someone and do a period of time. So if I'm going on vacation, and as much as I love sitting at the beach and approving requisitions, I don't want to do that, then a GP user could actually delegate a person to approve my items, and you put in a start date and an end date, and when the end date hits, then the delegation stops and it reverts back to the original. We'll take a look at that in a second. And then, as I mentioned, the emails are customizable. So one of the problems with the SharePoint workflow and some other pieces we've seen is you don't get the detail of what's in the PO. So the emails can be adjusted to actually show the detail. Mine, the one I had a bunch of those details. It takes about 5 minutes to customize it to show the details. So it's really pretty cool from that standpoint. All right, so let's spend some time in workflow. So really the kind of the most important pieces are under company setup. And there's a little workflow section here. We'll take a look at workflow maintenance first. And I'm looking at purchase requisition approval. I have a couple of different approval flow possibilities. Only one can be active at once. But what's cool is if I want to rework it, I can actually rework it and not make it active. And then once I've got it just right, I can make that the active workflow. So in this case, I'm a manager, so I can adjust workflows. All of the workflow approvals are based off of Active Directory. So these are not GP users, these are network users, which means it's going to go to their network email and kind of flow through that. So That makes it really convenient because you don't have to go and set up everybody as GP users just to be able to send an approval email. And so someone was asking about notifications. Here we've got to send notifications for completed actions. I'm going to just drill back in here. And so basically this is notify the originator. So this is the person who started, who made the requisition. We can choose to notify them when it's submitted, when it's resubmitted, when it's approved, completed, rejected, etc. We can also choose, and what message we want to send them. We can also choose to send a copy to someone else. So, if there's someone in the purchasing or shipping department, maybe that isn't in the approval flow, but they need to get information to know when things are going on, or they need to know that something has been approved, even though they're not in the approval flow, we can copy them here. Let me just pop over and check questions really fast. All right. Here's where we can allow approver to delegate tasks. So if you don't want your approvers to be able to delegate, you can simply unclick this box and all they will ever see is approve and reject. You can also choose to always require at least one approver. This is sort of a fail-safe. So if I say that Ron can approve from $0 to $5,000, and then I screw up and say Jane can approve from $6,000 to $10,000, there's a gap in there. So if I want something for $5,500, there's really no approver. It will force it to an approver to the next one up at that point in time. So always require at least one approver can be helpful. And then you can use an alternate, you can offer an alternate final approver as well. So the kind of this last piece on this window here is when a task is overdue. And what that means is when I start a task, we set the number of hours for someone to approve that. So, if I'm going to send Mary a request for approval, she has 8 hours, let's say, to approve this. Well, when a task is overdue, the system can do something about it once those 8 hours pass. And that includes escalate it to the next approver, escalate it to someone else, or automatically reject the overdue task. I've asked the team for a nag button, where if the task is overdue or halfway through the period, something like that, send another email to remind them. And so they're looking at that as a possibility. One of the things that comes with this overdue is you actually set a calendar in workflow to say when you work. So that if I ask for approval on Friday at 4, my 8 hours doesn't run out on Saturday. My 8 hours runs out end of the day Monday, basically. 8 hours just happens to be the default. It can be set for anything. So I only have one step in here. Do I have multiple steps in this one? No. All right, let me just we'll drill back on this step. So this is the first step. Basically, it's an approval step. For simplicity of demonstrations like this, I'm just always the approver. It's going to assign to me, and then here's where we set our time limit and use the workflow calendar. So I could say that I want to give someone 40 hours to approve this. And if I do this Monday morning, that will give them until Friday afternoon because it'll go by your work hours in order to do that. What message do we want to send, that sort of thing. And then this one is interesting. You can actually have multiple approvers and either do one response, the majority, or all of them must approve. So that one's kind of cool. If we want to do an action step, there's a little wizard here that walks you through this. So if I want to say, for example, I want this condition to be where the, grab something common here. Where's my amount? Okay, so there. So where the extended cost contains we'll say where the extended cost is less than and includes $5,000. And we could also say where the we'll say maybe I'm in charge of a site ID. Contains, I think there's one called North, something like that. And add that in. Display extended field list just gives you a few more fields here in order to be able to pick from. They didn't want you to have to search through kind of the less commonly used ones. And then field value. So if I were to say here that I want sorry, I used extended cost, but there is a subtotal here for the total. So if you're not looking at line items and you're looking at just the total, you've actually got control over both. What do I want? So site ID. That'll let you compare it to a field. Sorry. So anyway, that's the idea of how I would build this as my first one. And then I can also say that that this is a first step, or that this step follows the next step, because I only have one. It's grayed out, but I can create multiple steps here. So maybe maybe this is my approval, and then the next step is that it goes to somebody else. So it's possible, for example, that I have a dollar approval, and so this is my dollar approval, and then the next step after dollar approval is that it goes to a shipping department, and they do an approval as well to say, yes, we actually can ship this item. Sort of like when you buy a car, you put together a bunch of options. They actually have a department that says, yes, we can put all of those options together before your car is finally approved. So you got a lot of flexibility as to what you can do in this piece. And you're able to save steps and delete steps. And the one where I had to do both a dollar amount and a department, I think we ended up with like 30 or so individual pieces to that. So there's a lot of pieces. A couple of other just quick things around workflow. And so once you build a workflow, you just make it active, and that becomes your active workflow. The workflow calendar is really straightforward. You just set when you're open. If you have non-work days, holidays, you can plug those in here as well, other than just like a straight weekend day. And then the last thing is, with this piece is really the email message setup. So I just grabbed the standard message, which is I think it's the requisition approval. And I wanted to add in this detail here. So I was actually able to just go to document lines. And here, because these are the lines, I just inserted them from left to right of what I wanted the detail to be. And so it dropped it into the body here for me. So all that shows up here, this is kind of all pre-built. So this is the task deadline, the edit, the view. So, if you don't want one of these pieces, for example, you just remove it. It's just highlight and remove. It's similar to the like a word mail merge, in terms of it's a field that just gets dropped in. And so all I did was drop in detail, and the specifics that are in this detail actually sit here in the document lines area. So here in Home too, if I want to assign this to someone else, I can come to User Preferences and hit Workflow Delegation. And say that I want to delegate tasks. Now I don't have many users here. Let me see if I have any. But I could actually delegate. I could pick someone else who's going to be the delegate, assuming I have permissions to do this. This is all controlled with GP permissions. So I could pick somebody else. And for all workflow types, I could delegate this. I want to automatically delegate my tasks to, and this is who the person I would delegate it to. And then here's my start date and my end date. So then this would let me go out on vacation. We could also do it by workflow type, but a workflow type is yeah. There is a bug on this window, so I'm just going to leave. If you don't have someone delegated to, and I don't think I do because this is a test company and I have very few users in it, it does not want to let you out. Can I pick somebody? Well, let me delegate it to myself. It will let me delegate it to myself, which is interesting. I just wanted to show you by workflow types. So because this is for all workflows, the different workflow types are, there are a couple of payroll types and purchase order approval, vendor approval, those types of things. Most of these are GP 2015 only. 2013 basically had a payroll approval and PO and requisitions. So some of these, like payables batch approval, is GP 2015 only. But that's an example. If someone is going on vacation, you just have someone who's in charge of workflow administration to be able to delegate that, and kind of away you go. All right. We still seem to be okay here. Are the approvals based on a single workflow or based on an org chart? So if Joe reports to John and Gloria reports to Mary, does the system know to send? You can design the workflow a lot of different ways. So the question is, are the approvals based on a single workflow or are they based on an org chart? So if Joe reports to John and Gloria reports to Mary, does the system know how to send Gloria's reports to Mary and Joe's reports to John? If you set the workflow up that way, then yes, what you would do is the workflow would be, the condition would be Joe reports to John. So the condition would be if the submitter is Joe, then the approver would go to John. If the submitter is Mary, if the submitter is Gloria, then the approval would go to Mary. It's based on how you design it at that point in time. How do you load a set day weekly approval cycle into workflow? So a little clarification. I'm not sure I understand, but if you're trying to say everything needs to be approved by Thursday kind of thing, it doesn't do that at this point in time. So you wouldn't be able to say if it's not approved, but everything that is not approved by Thursday, route to the next approver. It still would be based on a hourly time frame. That's just kind of the way it works at this point in time. The team is actively developing the workflow pieces. GP 2015 got a bunch. I know they have scheduled for the next update actual AP transaction approval. So you could put a transaction in GP, scan in a document using the new GP document attach functionality, and then send that to someone for approval. It only makes sense to me that that really works if the document attachment can go with it. But I haven't seen a beta or a final from the team yet, so I don't know what that looks like yet. But I know that that is something that they're actively working on, and that I think workflow is going to continue to be a big part of GP. So as you look at this, if there are suggestions that you have, I'd really encourage you to go to Microsoft Connect. You can send them to me. I'll happily take them and put them up there. Or Microsoft Connect, you can go and actually make suggestions of things that you want in the product. Kind of what we found is that this fits really well for folks who need a kind of simplified, straightforward workflow. Maybe you want workflow, but it doesn't make sense in your organization to spend the money for something that is a little higher end. At the same time, there are also a bunch of requisition and workflow products as well that kind of have capabilities beyond this. So like everything else in GP, it kind of depends on what your needs are as to what the right solution is. We think this is going to be a good solution for a lot of folks. It's certainly not for everybody. There are definitely folks who have needs that go beyond what GP's workflow can deliver. But versus this workflow versus no workflow, I'm really happy with kind of what they've delivered so far. Let me just sort of wrap up a few things here, and then I'll take any other questions you got. For those of you who don't know, I'm the author of the GP 2010 and 2013 cookbook. So if you want a bunch of tips on GP, they are stuffed into these things. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, kind of everybody. If you like building dashboards, I've got a dashboard book on building stuff with GP and Excel. Also have some pre-built dashboards for sale. So basically they just plug into GP and away you go. And then if you just want something fun to read, my first novel is out. So if you don't mind killing people in a lot of plane crashes, it's kind of fun. So I'm going to leave the info slide up, and let me flip over and see if we've got any. Oops, that wasn't what I wanted. Let's go back one. See if we've got any more questions. A couple of other things that I think could be an issue. You can build a workflow in a test company or in one company and transfer it to another. It's done company to company in GP. It's not like you export a file and then you import in the other file. So if you're trying to pass it between different servers down the road, it's a little bit of a challenge, but it does make it possible for you to build your workflow and test it out in your test company and then push it through to a live company. So I thought the fact that they at least thought about that was a good place to start. All right. Any other questions here? All right. Well, I'm going to leave this slide up for a little bit here. If you have any other questions, please feel free to give us a call, drop us an email. We're happy to kind of take you through this even more in depth if you have some specific questions or something specific that you really want to see. Like I said, I think they did a great job for a beginning workflow, but there's still lots of room for improvement. So we'll take any suggestions that folks have. And thanks again for coming to our webinar, and we appreciate all of you.